I am joined by Rebecca Pinner, whose career journey is a testament to resilience, adaptability, and the pursuit of finding the right fit both personally and professionally. From years as a flight attendant to navigating the challenges of sales, Rebecca has faced pivotal moments that have shaped her path and taught her invaluable lessons about autonomy, growth, and what truly makes a good fit in a role. In this episode, we'll explore her transition to sales, the lessons she's learned about workspace culture, and how she's tackling her 2025 goals with purpose and determination. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jacob. Happy to be on here.
Yes, glad to have you. So we kind of talked, a little bit offline here, but we just kind of tell us I just love your journey because I feel like it's such a unique one. I feel like a lot of people kind of fall backwards into sales, and you started off your career as a flight attendant, right?
Yeah, it was kind of a crazy switch, you could say, but it was definitely the right choice for me personally.
So like what kind of talk us through it. So did you go into flight attendants like right out of school, or what got you into flight attending to start with?
I went to college in person for 1 year after
Mm.
high school and thought that I was going to be a nurse. And then I quickly realized that that probably was not the right path for me. I've had a lot of crazy career switches in my life already, and I'm only 27. But um, once I kind of had that realization that I wasn't going to go in the healthcare route, my aunt was a flight attendant
Mm.
for, I think, over 28 years, and she inspired me to kind of look at that option because it wasn't a typical office job. You get to travel the world and meet new people all the time. So I took kind of a break from college and then just ended up getting my associate's degree online. And then once I was old enough to apply to all the mainline airlines, I got in with United actually
Mm.
and worked with them for about 4 years. And then, um, yeah, I would say the pandemic hitting is kind of what started to make me realize that it was changing and it just wasn't going the way that I had kind of envisioned for myself. And I
Mm.
was starting to kind of think about if I really want to switch careers and go in a different direction, now's the time to start thinking about that. But what in the world would I even want to do? So,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, I think I think the pandemic did that for a lot of people. They're like, what am I doing with my life? I shouldn't be doing this anymore.
Yeah.
So you say you did the flight attendant thing for like 4 years, right? And it wasn't jiving for you anymore.
Yeah. So it was, I'd say, just under 4 years.
Mm.
And between the pandemic happening and then just the way things kind of ended up going after that, I would say, you know, dealing with some of the passengers was a little bit difficult. And especially working for a large airline, you are kind of seen as like a number in the system versus a human being sometimes. And I just felt like I was constantly at the mercy of the company and I didn't have any say over my own schedule or my
Mm.
finances or career growth. And my younger brother was in software sales at the time, and he was honestly like tripling my salary. And I was like, okay, maybe I picked the wrong path because while I'm getting to travel a lot, I feel like I'm not sleeping well. I don't have a good
Mm.
schedule. I'm not healthy. I'm not eating well. It was just, I just felt like I needed more control over my life in general. And so I started kind of getting the bug in my ear from my brother about, hey, maybe like look into tech sales. It's really booming right now. So, yeah.
So I love that. Well, and I have to ask because I feel like, being a sales guy myself, so many people I feel like they're almost intimidated by sales where, you have to go out and kind of earn your own way. You gotta show up and do the work every day. Cause you don't have necessarily that, super consistent paycheck coming all the time. So, how did you feel making that transition from what was like, I would imagine like a fairly steady income to something that was maybe a little bit more volatile or changing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think at the time I was really only like in sales, that was a big adjustment for me too, is talking about money and finances so
Mm.
openly. But at the time I was quite literally making like 31K a year as my base. And I was also based out of San Francisco and just really was living paycheck to paycheck with like barely anything left over at the end of every month. And I kind of figured even if I could get like a 45 or a 50K base and just kind of start there and then really like work towards the commission goals and make commission on top of that.
Mm.
That was a huge motivating factor for me to just go all in and do really well and work really hard so that I could get that commission bonus on top of a better base than I was already making. And I would say, money and the finances was definitely a big driving factor for me to want to even jump into the sales world to begin with.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's the money's there if you're willing to earn it, right? Like I feel like
Yeah.
that's true of regardless of what kind of sales role or industry you're in. Well, what would you say to the folks out there that maybe they're in a similar position to yourself where they, have like it's an okay job, but it's, pretty steady, but there's not a lot of that, career growth that they're really looking for like you were. And maybe they're thinking about sales, but they're not sure if sales makes sense for them, or maybe they don't have like the skill set. I mean, what kind of advice would you give to folks like that?
Yeah. Honestly, what helped me make that transition from something so different as in a flight attendant to going into a sales career was getting a coach or a mentor.
Mm.
And I went through kind of a program that existed at the time that was kind of a crash course into software sales and taught me everything from cold calling to sending email outreach to people to building a persona on LinkedIn and just kind of learning about all the different software tools that are used in your day-to-day life as a salesperson.
Mm.
Especially in tech sales, I would say there's a lot of tech involved as far as like CRM tools and LinkedIn Sales Navigator or different ways to try to get contact information for people. And being very organized is also very helpful, keeping tabs on everything. And but I think ultimately it boils down to learning about it first and not going in blindly, and finding a good mentor or coach who has experience in the field is definitely a good place to start, because ultimately that might help you figure out if that would even be a good fit for you or not. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Because I mean, sales, I mean, as you know, I mean, sales is it can be so different job to job and industry to industry and position to position. I mean, some of them, like yourself, like you're working from home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like a lot of them are work from home, especially in SaaS. But then like in my experience, a lot of what I did was outside sales. So I mean, I was on the road all the time and really figuring out, is this the kind of life that I want to lead, and does it support the goals that I have over the long term? I feel like it's absolutely critical. You have to get there.
For sure. And like you mentioned, there's different types of sales jobs out there too. It's not just one cut and dry route. When I first started and got into it, I only knew the world of SaaS sales. I didn't really realize that so many other things encompass the world of sales.
Mm.
There's retail, there's physical goods and products and services, and then there's SaaS, which is software as a service, where you're selling tech to people. And there's a lot of different avenues you could go with that.
So let me ask you then. So for, the folks like me that are a little more on the ignorant side, so like tell us about SaaS. Like how do you sell a service like that? Like what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so a lot of time on LinkedIn for
Mm.
sure. You're really depending on the product, and there's so many different things. I mean, I've had my fair share of a couple different experiences since I've gotten into it. But for example, I've done a couple different things in the cybersecurity world,
Mm.
and I've also done um, another one was like a restaurant tech platform that helped
Okay.
local mom and pop restaurants. So there's tons of different types of tech out there that you can sell to people, and it really comes down to learning about the product and the service that you're selling, and then who your target audience is. So in cybersecurity, it's usually people that are in IT, or they're a CISO, or they're overseeing the security at the company in some capacity, or they're an engineer, where they're dealing with the tech on a daily basis. And then at, the restaurant tech company, it was more so I'm looking for the owner of the restaurant and I want to
Mm.
get in front of them and see if this software would even make sense and help them and save them money. And yeah, there's a couple different things that you're looking at with that. But as far as your day to day, it ultimately comes down to just knowing the persona that you're going after and making sure that you're going after the people that would benefit from that product the most.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, really finding the reason to sell to people. I mean, I feel like, I don't know if you've experienced it, but I feel like a lot of times salespeople can get a bad rep that, yeah, we are financially motivated people, but I mean, you go to work because you love work, like
Yeah.
everybody needs, some income. But I feel like for the most part, salespeople, we're just trying to provide a service or a product that will ultimately help our customer. And I feel like if we're really good quality consultative salespeople, then if we have a product, we might present it to you, but we'll probably tell you like, hey, I don't feel like this is a good fit for you because of X, Y, and Z. I mean, how does consulting really kind of affect you in your sales process?
That's a great question. And I agree with you that salespeople can definitely get a bad rap sometimes. Um, I think everybody to an extent, works, so they can enjoy their life and make
Mhm.
money. And that's just a part of the game in general, no matter what you're doing. But in sales, it's different because you can either come at it from the perspective of, I'm just doing this to make money and get a fat commission check, or
Yeah.
I'm doing this because I actually like building relationships with people and talking to new people and um, genuinely helping them out with something that maybe they have an issue or they're struggling with something, whether it's in their work or their day to day. And we have a solution that could potentially help them that they've never heard about before. And then that can be a really cool conversation to have where you're coming in and kind of showing them a solution to a problem that they didn't know existed. And so
Yep.
that's where I find a lot of the value in it, and it kind of makes it worthwhile for me. Is it's, it can be a grind sometimes. There's a lot of cold calling and emails and a lot of rejection and a lot of no's, but when you do finally reach somebody who is interested and is, curious about what we do, then it makes it all worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like I'll tell you, like, I mean, commissions are all like they're all well and good and that can be a lot of fun, but when you have like those customers that only want to deal with you because of the relationship that you've built, like that for me is meant a ton. One thing you mentioned, I'm curious about, and I feel like a lot of people will resonate with this, is the rejection piece. Like you in sales, you have to figure out how to get comfortable being told no. So I'm curious, like how have you dealt with that, particularly coming from, not a sales background and getting into it?
I mean, a lot of it comes down to how you treat yourself and talk to yourself
Mm,
and, truly knowing your own self-worth before dealing with all of the rejection that comes along with a job like being in the sales industry. But um, for me personally, I love anything related to like fitness and being active and music and, so those are kind of my outlets, I guess, as
mm,
far as ways that I decompress after a long day or kind of start my day to get me motivated is go take a workout class or go for a long walk outside or listen to some really upbeat, fun music that you really enjoy. Or for some people, it might be playing their favorite video game at the end of the day or having dinner with a friend or a loved one or whatever that looks like. I think there's a lot of healthy ways to cope with it, and
mhm.
just I think it all kind of boils down to just taking care of your body, whether that's, working out or taking care of your mental health and just making time for yourself to decompress. Because some days can be long, some days can be really hard. Some days you face a lot of
Yeah.
rejection. I've
Yes.
personally gone through certain time frames where like I, didn't book a meeting for like 3 weeks at a time one point, and it was really tough. And then talking to a friend or talking to a mentor or talking to your manager and just getting advice. And sometimes all you need to do is just talk it out, vent it out, go for a long walk, come back, get into it. And before you know it, you'll book another meeting or get back on track to your quota. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm curious to kind of hear your reaction to this. Like I've personally thought about this, particular topic a lot. And I think it really kind of comes down to, I mean, I think kind of what you're talking about is your identity, right? It's like ultimately who you are. And if you are a salesperson that is selling a product that you believe in and that you truly believe not only that a product or service is worthwhile, but it will actually help people, I think that goes a long way. And then understanding that just because you message somebody on LinkedIn or whatever to try to set up a meeting, and they're like, no,
mhm.
then that's okay because that isn't a reflection of who I am or the product or company that I represent. That just means that for right now, or at least right now, it doesn't make sense for them. I mean, how does that resonate at all, or what do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it is really important to be working for a company or selling a product that you do feel strongly about, that you believe can solve some type of issue, or that you just believe in general. Um, because, it helps, just with selling in general. If it is a great product and it is helping people, it just helps you feel more confident going
Mhm.
out there and talking to strangers and trying to actually sell it. But at the same time, there's still going to be rejection, even if it is the most fantastic product on the
Yes.
planet. And it's all about timing. Today might not be the best day. This year might not be the best time
Yes.
for them. But at some point, there's someone else out there who is ready. Or, I've had situations where literally a year down the road, one person that told me no, or maybe said some unkind words to me, came back and they became like an inbound lead and they were inquiring about the product because now they were ready for it. So
Yes.
you never know when that's going to happen.
Absolutely. Well, I'm curious too, because I feel like we're kind of on the outskirts of something is follow up. Like I'm a really big believer. I've been in a lot of sales roles in my life, and I've dealt with a lot of sales people and customers too. And I'm a really big believer that I think, the ability to close or to talk about a product, I feel like those skills can always be worked on, always be refined. But when it comes to follow up, I feel like you have to have a follow up process in place. Otherwise, all that other stuff is moot. I mean, how do you feel about follow up?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the more important parts of sales, I would say, is having a good follow-up plan,
Mm.
whether it's an automated email sequence, whether you have reminders or tasks set for you, or things put on your calendar of, reach back out to so and so at this time on this day, or, that helped me a ton, even just with like when I was selling that restaurant tech
Mm.
software. I would have restaurant owners say, call me back tomorrow at 7 p.m. And I would literally
Yep.
put it on my calendar,
And do
say,
it.
call X person at 7 p.m. I would like link their LinkedIn or whatever I was using to get in contact with them. And then right at that time, call them back. And sometimes it would work and they would take the meeting. So follow up is definitely huge.
Yeah, when people love it, I mean, like the small stuff like that, which I mean, follow up is important, but when we're doing stuff like that, where, hey, call me back at 7 p.m. tomorrow, and you call them back at exactly 7 p.m. tomorrow, people eat that up. I feel like,
Yeah, they love it. Well, sometimes.
yeah, well, it's like, oh, you actually called me back. Like, I didn't want you to
Yeah.
call me back. Right?
Yeah.
But I know you've had, a handful of different sales roles in your, sales career. So in your experience, like what makes a really good sales role, and how do you identify a company that aligns with those values?
Yeah, I love that question just because I feel like it's very relevant to some lessons I learned, I think, just in this past year.
Mm.
Um, I think what makes a good sales role is, first of all, finding a really great company that is a good fit for you personally and professionally.
Mm.
And by that, I mean a company where you share the same values that that company has. You have a really fantastic manager who you feel like you can have a great relationship with. You have a team around you that's cheering you on and trying to help you as a collective team goal versus treating it like an individual
Mhm.
sport. And also, like we mentioned, having it be a product that you feel like you can genuinely get behind. But on top of that, when people think of a typical sales role, especially an SDR or BDR at a company, um, they think about it's just so much cold calling. Like I'm just cold calling all the time, and sometimes it is that. And sometimes the best way to get a hold of people, especially depending on what your product um, is just by picking up the phone and calling people. But
Mhm.
I personally have found the most success through LinkedIn and email outreach. And so I think when you have a management team or leadership team that is open to allowing their sales team to be a little bit creative with their
Mhm.
outreach and explore other avenues, like maybe even sending voice messages to people on LinkedIn, or sending them a video, or sending them a really personalized email on top of, the standard cold calling as well. I think it makes your day to day a little bit more enjoyable because you get some
Mhm.
more flexibility and freedom as to how you're choosing to reach out to those people and try to sell the product. So
I'm curious, do you feel like over, your time in SaaS, do you feel like people are generally becoming more responsive to like that cold call, like actually calling somebody on the phone? Or do you feel like those emails or the LinkedIn messages are getting better traction for you?
man, I say that's a really hot topic right now because I
Mm.
see that debated on LinkedIn all the time.
Yep.
Is cold calling dead? Is email dead? And I mean, I think it's really a personal preference on the buyer side,
Mm,
because I've had people be super responsive to my emails and, book a ton of meetings or intro calls with people just through email alone. When people were telling me that email was dead. But if you craft up the right email and make it
yeah.
nice and personalized, sometimes people are really receptive to that. But at the same time, I've also had a lot of luck on the phones, cold calling people, whereas they weren't responding to my emails, but then they finally picked up my phone call, had a chance to talk to them, and then they were suddenly interested. So I think it's just a personal preference on the buyer side. Like some people hate talking on the phone, and some
Hmm.
people would prefer a text message or an
Yep.
email, and they respond better to that. So I'm kind of down the middle. I feel like I can't give a solid answer one way or the other.
Same. Honestly, I'm right there with you too. And I think the answer is like, is calling better, or is texting better, or is messaging better, or is emailing better? I feel like the answer is just yes. It's all of them. And I feel like when you're building, especially like those follow up systems, you have to build them in such a way and with a cadence that you're gonna try to touch that prospect or that client in every way until you figure out which way they prefer to be contacted. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I think that's important for everybody that you're reaching out to.
So, one other question I had for you is, in your sales career, what's a lesson that you've learned that you feel like you wish you could have, learned earlier on?
That's a great question. I think what's top of mind for me right now is um, a lesson that I learned over the last year, and especially just going from such a dramatic career change of being a flight attendant to going into sales, um, is just forget all of the, frou-frou things about, what's next. People are always talking about promotions from an SDR to an account executive or whatever that path might look like. And
Mhm.
I think for a lot of us in the sales world, the goal is to eventually move on from being an SDR to whatever that next step is. And so I think I kind of went into my sales journey um, just really only focusing on like, I want to get that promotion as quickly as possible instead of like really taking my time to master the art of selling and being really good at selling whatever product or service I was selling at said company at the time. So along with finding a really great company that is a good fit for you personally and professionally, I think once you do find that, if you're lucky enough, stay there and like put the time in and don't be so focused on what's next and don't be, so easily swayed by outside factors, I would say. Because at the end of the day, the grass is not always greener on the other side. And
Nope.
um, I think if you've got a really great company with a great manager and the company treats you well and pays you fairly and all that fun stuff, you've got a pretty good job on your hands. So.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I would also add to that, like kind of like swinging back around to talking about like finding that right job that's the right fit. I feel like a lot, especially like the bigger companies in sales, they can get so money driven as a whole that can really affect the culture, I think. And I know I've experienced that. Have you ever experienced something like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it can start to pull away from the creativity factor of how people are outreaching and how we're trying to sell the product. Um, and it makes the sales team a little bit stressed, I would say. It can affect the culture and that people get so stressed and worried about hitting their number because quotas are getting raised and the
Yep.
numbers are going up and the expectations are getting higher and higher that it can feel like this never ending uphill battle sometimes, especially, when a company is implementing changes based on, wanting to hit that next target, hit that next goal. Um, it can be easy to lose sight of, the people that are at the heart of selling the product and going out there on the front lines and cold calling people and emailing strangers.
Yes, 100%. I mean, I feel like to some degree, and maybe there's a shift kind of going on in our culture as a whole, but I feel like as a company or business person, like our first priority should be our employees, because I mean, at the end of the day, those are the people that are actually generating the revenue, right? And then it goes product or service, and then we should focus on, customers and everything. But it's just so easy to lose sight of, hey, we have this big goal that we're not meeting, so we have to do whatever we can and scramble to get to it, right?
Yeah.
One last question here for you. So, early on in 2025, so what are some of your goals that you got coming up on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's top of mind for a lot of people right
Mm-hmm.
now. And, after kind of an interesting 2024, personally and professionally, I would say I had some pretty big career changes and realizations pop up, as well as personally, I somehow ended up needing a heart surgery at the end of last year. And
Oh,
so that
wow.
was a pretty monumental moment for me as far as, taking my health more seriously and
Mm-hmm.
listening to my body. And just, it wasn't anything that I did, but it was just like, it encouraged me to take extra care of myself personally, which I think translates well into your professional life. And with that, like, personally, the goals are focusing on my health and wellness per
Mm-hmm.
usual.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to start therapy again because I think that's also super important, and continue to take workout classes at least 3 times a week, if not more. Eat as healthy as I can, but also not like deprive myself of a piece of cake or something here and
Right.
there. Just enjoy life, but also be healthy and be mindful about how I'm doing that. And professionally, I know we kind of talked about this the other day, but um, I my word for the year was wealth,
Mm.
and I think that's kind of in a monetary way, but also in the regard of becoming wealthier in knowledge. And it's a goal of mine to listen to more podcasts like this, or read more books, or, get a life coach, or kind of along with therapy, like, just open my eyes to different experiences that I could have or do or learn about to just make me um, maybe just like a smarter person or just wealthier in knowledge about many different things, especially related to sales or whatever is going to help me in my career as well. So, um, yeah, I know that's kind of a lot of word vomit, but I'd say that that's top of mind going into the new year.
Well, so I mean, I love that. I mean, word vomit aside, like I think those are all fantastic goals, and I feel like a lot of people are, I mean, right there with you, where they're trying to focus on their health, but they want to read some more books and they want to better themselves and all that kind of stuff, and just being open and willing to try and see how things go. Because I mean, you might read one book and it doesn't resonate at all, and you read another book and it changes your life entirely. So just being open to trying new things in a systemic way where, I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, there's been, years past where I put together my goals for whatever year that happened to be. And I wrote them down and I was all excited about them. And then come, March 1st, I had forgotten what they were already. So
Yeah.
finding those ways to keep those things front of mind so that I absolutely, absolutely love it. Well, Rebecca, thank you again for joining us today on Purpose Driven Progress. It was great to have you.
Thank you, Jacob. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, well, anybody listening, make sure to subscribe if you want to hear more great conversations like this, and we'll see you next time.